Will this be kept confidential? Hands down, this is the number one question I receive. There isn't even a close second in my work. And this comes from every level of the organization, even though it's at the highest levels of leadership. If you're asking me this question, it means you have a deep concern that telling me your truth about what you're experiencing in the workplace will be held against you. And what you tell me, if it can be traced back to you, could have consequences to your career and your financial livelihood. So the number of repeated times that this is asked of me gives me a strong indication about the unhealthy culture that you're working in. So I know that you are relying on me to hold what you disclose to me with the highest standards of confidentiality, because it's likely you have leaders that are silencing your truth, using their power in a harmful way. And what's concerning is that in the spirit of improvement, transparency of truth is the biggest threat to those in power. And that is the number one reason why culture change is failing. I want to give you a peek inside my world. I work with executive leaders behind closed doors in boardrooms sealed by NDAs. These are the people who hold the most power in the organization, so it means they're mostly accountable to themselves. I had a team bring me in to rebuild their culture after the results of an employee engagement survey. In this team, there was already division and distrust because some people were close and felt safe with the CEO, and others didn't feel safe and were not close to the CEO. So I had to use hypotheticals to uncover the things they were not able to talk about together. So we use scenarios to solve for why top talent leaves, why employees don't buy into the values, and why the number one sentiment that's associated with culture change is this: they will never change, meaning leadership. And when the CEO heard this, he said, they are not going to say that about us, right? We're ready to talk about the real stuff here. And every single executive nodded their head in agreement. So this marks a really important milestone. It means they have worked past their interpersonal power dynamics that were dividing them and ready to come together to dive deep and be able to talk about what's real without assigning blame. So I shared what I had been assessing and hearing the past several months, that individuals were getting discredited for raising certain concerns. Others were being removed from opportunities they once had as a form of punishment. And favoritism was eroding the values they claimed to be upholding. So what happened next wasn't dramatic, but it was telling. After every session, we would go to dinner. We bonded, we laughed. You could say I was part of the inner circle of trust. After this session, they went to dinner. I wasn't invited. I thought, did I miss an email? Was I on a group text that I missed? We know what happened. It got too real, and I was out. The executive development sessions, they discontinued without any explanation. Change completely stopped. That's how quickly and quietly it happens. And sadly, this is not rare. There's high trust, even enjoyment for the work that we're doing, up until the moment truth acts like a mirror and they realize the staff aren't the ones who have to do all the change. It means us too. That's when things begin to unravel. And sadly, those who dare to have hope and took a risk to speak with me and tell me their stories, they're completely let down. That's the thing with power. It protects itself at the cost of progress. After 2 decades of working with executive leadership teams, I had to find new answers. I needed to understand what is the moment that leaders who are so inspired to champion change quit without consequence. And this is what I discovered. The presence of truth, when it feels unfavorable, triggers self-protection. And as a result, leaders are abandoning their higher purpose the moment the instinct to self-protect outweighs their commitment to a mission that's greater than themselves. It isn't because there's lack of strategy or lack of alignment, and it isn't even that there wasn't enough budget. 90 out of 100 leaders will choose to conceal information that feels unfavorable and protect above their purpose. This is why 90% of culture change initiatives are failing. See, we've been taught that purpose shapes great leadership. I believe this too. For years, I helped leaders define their purpose, convinced their impact would have no limits, until I noticed this pattern. When information or feedback exposes the gap between their intent and their impact, there's a pattern that emerges, and it happens in this specific sequence. The brain warns, danger. The amygdala says, protect me. Now suddenly ego is jumping into the driver's seat, has put purpose to the back seat, and with ego driving, now leaders will use their power to dismiss, deflect, or invalidate any truth that exposes vulnerabilities in their leadership. And this is what surprised me the most. There are limitations with purpose-driven leadership. Purpose does not protect you from your ego. I want to say that again. Purpose is not protecting you from your ego. And in fact, you will abandon your purpose when your position, your power, or your favor feels in jeopardy. So what separates the 10% from the 90%? What are they doing differently? How are the 10% keeping purpose in the driver's seat? They are leading with a set of principles that are serving their purpose when it is the most difficult to do. It isn't more humility, it isn't even higher integrity, and it definitely isn't better values. They are using their principles to uphold their purpose when their ego is under threat. This is how I define principles. They are the code that you will not abandon no matter the risk or sacrifice to serve the greater good, especially when it's hard. They are what holds you steady when every part of you is deceiving and betraying your purpose and telling you to retreat. And a great example of this is in John Wick chapter 4. John is about to be attacked by the high table assassins, and Shimazu is there with him. John says, for troubling you like this, I'm sorry. Shimazu replies with, friendship means little when it's convenient, and remains by his side. Yes, even assassins have a code that we can learn from. Let's apply that in leadership. Purpose means little when it's convenient. Let me explain. In my research, I had 4 archetypes of purpose-driven leaders, highly committed to change, emerge. And 90% of these fell into the first 3, when truth activated their ego. Archetype 1, purpose-driven leaders who are performative. They inspire through words, but they fall short in action, so they lose all credibility. Archetype 2, purpose-driven leaders who are judgmental. They have high ideals that get lost in being overly critical, so their contempt disempowers the ability to inspire change, even when they're right. Archetype 3, purpose-driven leaders who are oppressive. This is always surprising to people because personal stability is their highest priority. They support a false sense of harmony and only perpetuate the status quo. But now you have the 4th archetype, the rare 10%. These are the purpose-driven leaders that are transformative. They're transforming themselves, their relationships, and their companies. What sets them apart is this. Truth is not being evaluated whether or not it is true or not. They're using it as this form of intelligence to consider so that it is driving innovation, inclusion, and performance. So while the 90% are running away from truth, the 10% are running towards it. And the 10% are sitting in the discomfort and the tension that arises when truth gets out into the open, while the 90% are suppressing it. And there's one defining choice that I noticed with every single transformative leader that I worked with. They were willing to sacrifice how they looked to serve the greater good. And through this, they upheld their purpose. The 90% were concerned with preserving their image. So we need leaders who are not just speaking truth to power. We need power to be willing to go out and pursue the truth, to find it in the pockets where it's hiding, and then to consider it and be shaped by it. I want to tell you about Mark. He's a chief operating officer for a mid-sized company, about 3,000 employees. His purpose? To build a culture in which every single voice matters. He believed this to his core until the anonymous employee survey. And it exposed that he was imposing double standards with those who had favor versus those who didn't. And this was connected to him and other colleagues of his. When I shared this with him, he told me, no, he instructed me not to distribute it. As a consultant, I had to honor that my hands were tied. So because he had the power to bury it, he did for weeks. Then 2 months later, they had me facilitate their executive offsite. He was asked about this survey. Instantly, our eyes met. It was one of those moments where I tried to look away and I couldn't. It probably felt way longer than what it actually was. Finally, he actually stood up in front of everyone and he said, I failed to act on what I knew because I didn't like the way it made me and others of us in this room look. But now I'm realizing it's doing far more damage. It was in that moment that he became part of the 10% of transformative leaders. And it wasn't because he was perfect, but it was because he chose principle over preservation that upheld his purpose. And that began the course of radical change for his own leadership and that team moving forward. This is what I want to leave you with. Each of you, not once, but many times in your life, are going to face a similar crossroads. And at that crossroads will be the choice between serving your purpose and making a difference, or protecting yourself and staying comfortable. And there will be a single question at this crossroads. What truth are you willing to face, even when it challenges how you see yourself? And your choice will be, I'm going to let that be revealed, or I'm going to use my power to bury it. Your leadership will be defined in these moments. Your legacy will not be built in moments of ease. Your legacy will be built in moments of resistance at this crossroads. Thank you.